stories came out that Kawhi Leonard is distant from the Spurs. He's not talking with the Spurs. He is the rehab and his whole process, right? It's just not going according to plan, right? And there's two pretty big opinions that are floating around. Jalen Rose from ESPN was talking about, and him and other guys, I'm just simply citing him, that Kawhi Leonard is unhappy that the Spurs haven't brought superstar talent back, right? And there was a whole bunch of other guys reiterating that opinion, that the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge, while he's a nice player and he's an all-star player, he's not elite level superstar player that, Kawhi would want to play with in order to win titles, right? And then you had guys who, you had really just one guy I can really cite, a guy in Colin Cowherd, who took the opportunity to be like, see, this is the difference between LeBron and Kawhi. LeBron talks, Kawhi doesn't. That's why LeBron averages more assists, and Kawhi doesn't because he just doesn't talk. Which, is just it's a really weird. It's a weird comparison to be like, well, this guy doesn't talk, so that's why this guy averages more assists. Okay, whatever. Which I'm saying that. And I'm prefacing that my analogy is probably just as weird as Colin comparing talking and assist. But I'll get to that in a second. Then you have the guys who are like, it's not a big deal. He's still the third best player in the world. He's still going to be getting a max deal. He's still great. He's still about to enter his prime. He will be fine. Then I started to think about it. And I was like, you know what? This is the story of Kawhi Leonard's life. And let me be clear, or be more specific, it's the story of his auto life, right? Kawhi Leonard drives a 94 to 96, it's in that range, old, kind of beat up car, right? And he got a lot of credit for driving this car. Got a lot of credit for driving this car because of he drives this car for the reason of he didn't want to have a car note. He wasn't paying for luxury replacement in case something happened with his car. And his motto was, it runs, why mess with it? My car runs. My car works, right? And that's an admirable quality. A lot of us, we have trouble when we get an extra $5 not blowing it at Starbucks the next day, or getting an extra $100 not going and buying something on Amazon that immediate day. There's so many of us that we, if you get paid bi-weekly or if you get paid once a month, there's a bunch of you that's like, you live rich the first week and then you're scraping together the second week, right? So it's a very commendable trait for Kawhi. Now, Kawhi's probably looking at the Spurs in terms of the distance between him and them, kind of like his car. Kawhi's looking at the Spurs, kind of this 90 beat up car, not a lot of really shiny parts. Yeah, it still runs, it still works, they're still going to win 50 games, they're still going to be in the playoffs. But they're probably past being pristine. They're past being a dynasty type team. They're past being a perennial contender to win the NBA Finals. And he's looking at that thinking to himself, do I really want to stay here and endure this broken down car longer than I actually have to? Like, what do people do? Even other people that maybe they can't afford a new car, but they're holding on to their car. But as they held onto their car and it gets towards the end, you don't go for oil changes as often. They don't get the tires rotated as often. You don't get the brakes looked at as often. You start to distance yourself from the car. When you first get the car, you're getting oil changes, getting your tires rotated, windshield up. You're doing everything in your power. When Kawhi first got to the Spurs, what was his thing? He was improving every year because he still had Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. That's the nice tires, the nice big engine. All the gadgets were still new-ish. He He was improving every single year. He wanted to work hard for that car. Remember how you looked at your first car? And your first car was a junker. You looked at your first car with passion. You looked at it with pride. You loved that thing. And then as you were about to get a new one, if you're Kawhi Leonard about to get a new max contract, you're kind of looking at it going, I mean, it was my car, but I really like this car over there. I think Kawhi Leonard is looking at the geography of the NBA. I think he's looking at the future and who's going to be competitive over the next 4 to 5 years. That Spurs team isn't competing with Golden State. That Spurs team might not even be able to compete with Houston. That Spurs team might not be able to compete with the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. Kawhi is distancing himself from the Spurs, distancing himself from that old car. Why keep getting oil changes? Why keep rotating your tires? Why keep doing all these little things on your car if you know you're getting rid of it in 6 months? Call me crazy. But if Kawhi thinks like that with his car, which is an asset, it's not that far-fetched to believe he might think that same way with his professional team.